Welcome to the Jiu Jitsu Oracle's Craig Jones Invitational over 80 kilogram division tier list. I'm Ross. I'm joined as always by Calum, and in the latest of our tier list rankings, where we're covering all of the ADCC and CJI divisions, now we're on to the big boys in CJI. So, for those watching on YouTube, you'll see Luke Rockhold has already been placed in C tier, and we're going to give our justification for that in a minute. But first off, Calum, can you quickly run through the criteria by which we are ranking these grapplers?
Yeah, our criteria is S tier, you're either the favourite or one of the favourites to win the division. A tier, you have a good chance of winning the division and a good chance of going pretty deep, so maybe semi-final or finalist. B tier, we've categorised as the dark horse tier, so these guys could surprise a lot of people, could go very far in the competition, or if it's their day and everything goes well on the day, they could even win the division. For C tier, we've labelled this as disruptor tier, so to get into this tier, probably not likely to win the whole competition, but we think you can disrupt a bit, maybe take out some big names, win one or two matches. And then D tier, we've got this as just the unproven category. So if you're in this, it just means that in your career, you've not really shown as of yet that you can beat some of the guys in this division or win a match.
Okay. Luke Rockhold is in C tier. That was primarily your suggestion. Why is Luke where he is?
Yeah, so Luke was put as one of the top 4 seeds, but I think that was a bit more of a popularity contest, and obviously it's probably the biggest name in this just in general because he's an ex-UFC champion. I don't think he's a top 4 seed, but I think you had thought about unproven D tier. I thought he was above that just because he had a match with Nicky Rod a few years ago on Polaris, and it was pretty competitive. It was very back and forth on the feet. I think Nicky Rod won a close decision, but I think that performance in and of itself, given the fact that Nicky Rod is one of the favourites in this division, puts him up into C tier. Obviously, some of the best grappling we've seen in MMA as well, and he was somewhat of a jiu-jitsu competitor before his MMA days. I think he won like Purple Belt Worlds. Obviously, that's not like the biggest achievement in the world in the context of this sort of division, but like he's been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time. He's had competitive matches against the likes of Nicky Rod, and he's shown really good grappling in MMA. So I thought he wasn't really unproven. I thought C tier would be quite appropriate for this. And the thing about this tier list is it's the first one we've done where we've got the brackets, so we know who he's got a first match. He's got Pat Downey. I think that's quite a good match for him. I don't see him taking down Pat Downey, but I do think that will play into Luke's game of like snatching up a front headlock, maybe a guillotine, or snatching up a front headlock and then butterfly sweeping that we've seen him do many times in MMA. So I think that could be quite a favourable matchup for him.
Why I was thinking Luke might be unproven is the criteria which I go by to rank grapplers are accolades, strength of schedule, form, and eye test. And really, as you alluded to, I believe it was 2007 when Luke won at Purple Belt. So it's quite a long time ago. Then we've obviously seen him do very, very well MMA, but different sport. And then I've got no form or strength of schedule really to go by, although you did highlight a match with Nicky Rod. Most of what I know about Luke comes from people talking about how good a grappler he's said to be in training.
Does that count as the eye test, or is that the ear test?
Well, it's maybe the ear test, Calum. That was what I was trying to get at. Good point. So, I don't know, I've not seen, but I've heard good things. So, I'm fine with him being put into C tier. I think, like, definite, like, disruptor potential. And, this bracket's slightly different to some we've done before because we know the draw. And he's got Pat Downey first round, and I think that's a very winnable first match for him. Second round, he's going to get the winner of Adam Bradley against Kyle Babe. And we'll get into like our predictions for the brackets in time. But I think there's definitely a way Luke could win against those guys, but I think like it's not set in stone that it will happen. So thereafter, like, you know, you're getting into some of the more established guys and it gets a bit tougher, but yeah, like I would say, like, disrupt their potential. So we've got Luke in C. Now, let's go to friend of the gym, friend of us, I believe, William Tackett. Where do you put William's chances?
Yeah, this is quite difficult just because I think William is the smallest guy in this division, and there's some really big guys in this. There's guys that are like 260, 280 pounds, and William probably, I would imagine, will be going into this around 90 odd kilos, which is like just shy of 200 pounds. So like that's quite a big differential in weight. However, I think just from a pure skill perspective, he is the most skilled and most technical grappler in this division, especially in no-gi. You could argue like Victor Hugo would be up there as well. But I think in no-gi, like well-roundedness and just like overall skill, William, for my money, is the most skilled grappler in the division. So obviously he's got one thing going for him, but then he's got another thing going against him in the physicality, which is going to make it really difficult for him. We've seen him do well against some of these bigger guys. He spoke about on his YouTube channel, he had a close match with... Did he say he beat Victor Hugo, or you had a close match at the time?
I think it might have been close match at the time.
Yeah, and then he's beaten other big guys like Tex Johnson back in the day as well, so you can definitely beat some of these bigger guys. I would think like dark horse tier for him. Quite a big question mark about how he's going to deal with the physicality, especially like 4 matches in a row. You know, it's one thing taking out one big guy, but then doing that like 4 matches in a row, and that like starts to fatigue you over time. That's going to be quite challenging for him. But I do think he's got a very well-rounded skill set. I think these guys that are wrestlers in the division, he can leg lock them, and I think these like guard players, he can pass their guard. So I think he's got a well-rounded skill set. It's just the physicality that he's going to struggle with. So I think B tier dark horse could definitely win if things go well for him, but it will be quite challenging, I think.
If you have not heard the interview that we did with William that talked about how he was going to prepare for ADCC trials and what he thought it took to win trials, then I definitely think you should listen to that if you are a competitive grappler or you have interest in grappling competition. There was loads of great insight there. William was gracious enough to grant us an interview. He wasn't put off by the thought after spending time with us at a seminar that he did in Aberdeen. So that's why I suggested that he's probably still friends with us, right? Like he did that interview. But yeah, very good chat, and you'll find it on the Jiu Jitsu Oracle channel. Let's go for one that's a new addition to the submission grappling scene, but there's been a buzz around him taking part, and that's Daniel Kerkvliet.
Yeah, so for him, just based off the categories that we have come up with, I think as far as submission grappling, which this event is, obviously he kind of has to fall into the D tier, but I think of all the guys in the D tier, he could go very far. Like if I had to put money, I would probably put money on him going far compared to some guys even in C tier. So we kind of just have to stick with how we're categorizing people with our own like justification for that. We kind of have to put him in unproven, but I think his skill set and his physicality and just the level of athlete he is, he could do very well in this competition. I think he's got a very rough matchup stylistically in the first round with Fellipe Andrew. Fellipe Andrew's got good wrestling, but he's obviously not going to likely wrestle against this guy. He's going to pull guard, and Felipe's got a very good guard and very dangerous submission attacks, very good ankle lock attack. And like you kind of mentioned, a wrestler that's maybe not used to that and whose main priority is wrestling and not this tournament, even though $1 million is on the line, maybe Fellipe, even if he just like wrapped up the ankle, the wrestler Daniel might like freak out a little bit and panic tap. So I think he's got a rough matchup first round, but if we see him looking good in that, and then coming into the next match, we could potentially see him going pretty far.
So by all accounts, he's very big, about 250 pounds maybe.
I think 285 actually.
285, yeah. So yeah. Could be the biggest guy in the division.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I believe, well, he competes for Penn State. I know that. But I think so. That's NCAA Division 1 level, so highest college wrestling level in America. And I think
NCAA champion as well, is he?
I think he might have come second in the NCAAs, but need to double check. But I think that's right. And then 3-time All-American. So anyway, very, very credentialed at D1 level. So that's although wrestling, collegiate wrestling is different to wrestling within a submission grappling context. And that's a whole other discussion that we could get into on another podcast and that we might cover after these events, talking about who had the best wrestling and why they had the best wrestling. But
collegiate wrestling, to be fair as well, I would also say is the best style of wrestling outside like submission wrestling or catch wrestling, just because the match continues on the ground and control and pinning is prioritized compared to like international freestyle wrestling where that's not really taken into consideration. So we've seen some pins, some pin wins on his record as well. So I think control-wise on the ground, if he can take someone down like into side control, I think he'll have good control on the ground. It's just how he's going to deal with the submissions and the guard.
I was thinking about the sort of, I was trying to think of a word here, the benefits of Greco-Roman when it comes to submission grappling, you know, winning hand fights, collar ties, underhooks, all that, on the feet, not shooting, not putting yourself in trouble. That's a whole other discussion we're getting into about like wrestling on the feet and like what's the best for jiu-jitsu. But I will say, for anyone like thinking about that, Martin Edma, EEDMA, black belt from Estonia, really good jiu-jitsu player, really good coach. He has some Greco-Roman for jiu-jitsu videos via BJJ Globetrotters on YouTube. So check them out if you're intrigued by this discussion that Calum and I are starting to go into. But we're going to come back to the tier list because we've only got so much time. For the next contender, why don't we talk about Owen Livesey?
Yeah, so Owen got a good matchup first round. Like, I think everyone, when Owen is in a tournament or a super fight show, wants to see him against another guy that can compete with him on the feet, and he's got that in Muhammad Ali. I think disruptor potential is probably fair for him. Got some wins over guys like Michael Pixley, Chris Weidman, so can probably clear unproven just about. But I think anything above disruptor is probably not in Owen's wheelhouse. But yeah, I think he could win that match against Muhammad Ali. It's going to be a tough one for him with the physicality. We've not really seen Muhammad Ali recently, but just given Owen's stand-up ability, and there's a lot of wrestlers in this division, I think disruptor tier would be fair.
2014 gold at the Commonwealth Games for England in judo. So that's a good credential. And then since moving over to submission grappling, like you said, beat Pixley, beat Weidman, has a win over Josh Hinger, and also has a draw with Nicky Rod in a quintet rule set. If it was like, I don't know, like under this rule set that we might see on CJIs, like Nicky Rod would probably win the match.
Definitely, yeah.
But still, like, Owen didn't lose that match. So I think like he's got enough on his resume to be above like unproven. I will say this with Owen is like, I think he really benefits from going up against people where he can counter throw. So when the onus is on him to like push forward and initiate the action and wrestle, then he can find it more difficult than when someone's willing to like push forward on him. He's very, very good at counter throwing. So again, like it depends like how the match works out against Muhammad Ali or whoever else Owen plays against.
Yeah,
but
it's a bit of a judo style as well, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So I think everyone Owen stands with in grappling is usually more like wrestling based. Muhammad is a bit more judo based as well, so that might be interesting to see how that plays out.
Okay, but we're putting Owen in C tier. I think he's got disruptor potential, but don't feel that he's going to go very, very deep into this category, like maybe semis or final, which would be your dark horses. Let's talk about someone we've probably talked about already because he's made the switch over, but Adam Bradley.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Yeah, I think for him, C tier would also be a fair category for him, especially looking at his matches. Kyle Boehm, I don't know if they faced the trials, but like Adam did win, but like we all kind of know he won with that sweep in a trial that Kyle didn't win. That will be an interesting matchup. I think he can definitely win that match, and then I think he can also beat the winner of Pat Downey and Luke Rockhold, just given that he's got quite a good guard, and he could use that against those guys that probably aren't as experienced in dealing with like high-level jiu-jitsu guards. Don't really see him going all the way, so I don't think B tier would be a fair category for him, but he's definitely more than unproven.
I've got on my notes here, Kyle Boehm lost Adam Bradley West Coast trials.
Okay, so Adam beat Kyle.
So I believe so from when I wrote these notes. So, but I can't quite remember like that whole tournament off the top of my head. Yeah, very good. The thing about Adam I find difficult is like he's very, very good at like deep half, very, very good at escapes, very, very good at like jiu-jitsu where like, again, like he's kind of on the back foot a little bit. And then like this competition is going to prioritize initiation of action.
Yeah.
And I think that's really going to hurt Adam's chances of progressing.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, especially like shorter rounds as well. So if he's like on the back foot for 4 minutes and then gets a sweep and starts to look good in the last minute of each round, that might not be enough to get the nod in those particular rounds. So yeah, that's a good point you made.
And then like his success is kind of being like, I think IBJJF kind of like purple brown belt level, but like then again like at black belt level, like he's only like the losses I'm kind of taking note of are to the likes of like Pedro Murillo, I've got Tynan written down, Roberto Jimenez. So it's like these are really, really good guys. So yeah, are you going to put him in C tier? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, let's put him in C tier. And let's talk about, well, we mentioned him already, so let's just dive into a further analysis. Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, so difficult one just because we've not seen in the past few years. He's been focusing on MMA. Was it 2021 or 2029 ADCC the last time we saw him? Do you have a note of that?
21, he lost to Victor Hugo.
Okay, yeah, so been a few years since we've seen him. Not sure if he's done much else since then. Have I got a little tab up of what he's done? Yeah, I think that was, well, yeah, he lost to, was it ADCC lost to Victor Hugo? So I've got here that the IBJJF Grand Prix, he lost to Victor Hugo in 2021. So yeah, that was maybe the last time we've seen him, which was maybe
2019 ADCC. You're right. I've got he lost to Nicky Rod and Buchecha.
Yeah, and then he beat John Hansen and Tim Spriggs.
Yes,
I lost to Lachlan as well, obviously.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, kind of hard to place, just given that we've not seen him much the past few years. Obviously, very big, very physical, good stand-up. We don't know if some skill sets have like deteriorated since he's trained MMA, or maybe his stand-up's gotten even better, his control on the ground's got even better. We don't really know at this point, so I'm kind of between C and B tier with Muhammad. What are you thinking?
Well, I think past Muhammad Ali, peak Muhammad Ali would be about, maybe round about 2018. He won IBJJF Worlds. So, that's 6 years ago now. I think he won the Nogi in 15. So, again, quite a while ago. Been focusing more on MMA now. I find it hard to place Muhammad. I think even like peak Muhammad, it was still like you would judge him based on like potential in a lot of matches, but had the ability to lose those matches as well.
Yeah.
So it is an unknown a little bit, but I think that like puts him in the dark horse tier.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Because I think as well, like on his day, he could, but it's a tough, like the draw makes that difficult for him because he's going to get, like, if he does beat Owen Livesey first round, he's going to get Nicky Rod or Max Jimenez second round, right?
I mean, he had a close match with Nicky at ADCC and, but
a little while ago, and Nicky's been focusing on jiu-jitsu and Muhammad's.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's that question mark of like, has his skills deteriorated, or maybe like his stand-up's gotten better doing MMA? We don't really know. As far as Nicky Rod, so like obviously he's gotten better at jiu-jitsu, but like I was making the point to you the other day, if you actually look at it, like as far as what he's done in competitions, he's not really like improved. He came like right out of the gates, gotten silver at ADCC, which is obviously amazing. Then he did that again the next year. So like we've not really seen him elevate to that point of like winning an ADCC, or maybe he'll win the CJI, and definitely that would be his biggest achievement. But you know, like doing well against Nicky Rod then, I don't think is like too much different against like being able to do well against Nicky Rod now. But I think the biggest question mark is like Muhammad's skill set and where that is now compared to then.
Okay, let's keep talking about Nicky Rod then.
Okay.
Where do you think you should go?
I think he's one of the two favourites to win this division. I would put him in S tier. So he has got a loss recently to one guy in this division, Victor Hugo. So you can maybe have a guess about who the other guy in S tier is going to be. But look at his record outside of that. So like the names he's lost to in the past few years are like Victor Hugo, Gordon Ryan, Fellipe Pena, Yuri Samois. So like huge names. And then the names he's beat: Mason Fowler, Roberto Jimenez. He's beaten Yuri Samois as well. Dan Monasoyu, Wagner Hocha, like Luke Griffiths, so like some of the biggest names in the sport. He's two-time ADCC silver medalist. It was a close match with Victor Hugo, especially up until the end, and I think he's lost to Victor Hugo previously as well. Okay, he's actually lost 3 times to Victor Hugo, so like I think that's going to be a tough matchup if he goes up against him. Maybe this rule set though, with like the kind of 5-minute sprints, will favour Nicky Rod a little bit more, but I think outside of him having a tough time with Victor Hugo, I think he's got a good chance of like winning this division, and I would definitely put him as one of the favourites.
So I think he has improved.
Yeah,
since,
definitely.
Like
yeah,
early Nicky Rod. This is a discussion we were getting into, like with it, like relative to someone else's chances against Nicky. If they'd done well against him a few years ago, would they still do well against him? Yeah, it's like he did have that phenomenal breakout run way back at the ADCC. What was it, like 2019 was his first ADCC? Yeah. And really, like, you have to be like pretty good to beat Nicky Rod, right? When you look at like who does beat him. So I think like he's going to be like a tough nut to crack for anyone outside of like the absolute elite. Although all that said, I think he has a very difficult match in the first round. And like it goes back to this idea of like your first match and your last match in a competition are often the hardest. And he's got Max Jimenez first round, and I think like, I mean, maybe we should just go on like seamlessly to talk about Max now.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I agree with the first round being the hardest round. So, given the fact, however, that Nicky Rod's got a BJJ Fanatics DVD on how to warm up for competition, I'm sure he's going to get a good warm up in and get his heart rate up and do everything a proper athlete should do and be ready to go for that match at the very least. So I think he'll be raring to go at that first match. But yeah, we can move on to talking about Max.
Yeah, let's talk about Max for a bit then. So where do you think we should place him?
Yeah, so despite what Craig was saying about him retiring, he has actually had like a fair few matches in the past few years. Last match win over Dan Monasoyu by decision, which is a big win. Lost to like Fellipe Pena, lost to Victor Hugo by toe hold, so like some losses to some of the biggest names in the sport, but some big wins on his resume as well, and definitely one of like the bigger guys in this division. Good stand up, good top game, very big, very physical. So yeah, that's going to be a tough match for Nicky Rod. Probably quite tiring as well. So I could definitely see Max winning that match, although I think it's quite slim odds, maybe give him like a 10 to 20% chance, but like the chance is definitely there. Because of that, if you got like the potential to beat Nicky Rod, I think B tier would be quite fair, although I don't think he's like super likely to go far, which would put him in A tier, and he's definitely not a favourite. But I think below B tier would probably be a bit unfair for him.
Now, this is an unverified statistics, but unverified statistics are all the rage these days in political discourse, so let's go along with it. But someone suggested that Max is 1-12 against opponents in this division.
Okay.
So, I don't know if he is. I would need to comb through his record in depth. But when I was reading someone else's preview of this division, I think that's a statistic that they put out.
I'm having a look through his record right now, and he's got a fair few losses to Muhammad Ali, Victor Hugo, and Fellipe Andrew. So, those three guys are probably making up a lot of that because those guys were competing a lot on the IBJJF circuit, so it makes sense that he was going to run into those guys a lot of the time. So, when you put out that statistic, maybe some people think, he's lost to, everyone in the division, but that's not the case. The majority of the losses are coming from those three guys, who are also some, big names in the division, to be fair.
Very good guys. So, yeah, I think Max, that match against Nicky Rod is going to be real interesting. If Max can, slow it down, make it grindy, it's not that's not heavy in terms of, scoring potential in this rule set, but it might make it tough for Nicky Rod to score on him. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, I think especially for Max, if he can get past Nicky Rod, then the division kind of opens up a bit, you know what I mean? So we'll see, but yeah, I think that's a fair placing. Okay, what about Pat Downey?
Yeah, so he's one of the two wrestlers in this division, probably the lesser favoured one, just given the fact that he's less credentialed in wrestling and not quite as big and as much of an athletic freak. That being said, though, he's beaten Nicky Rod in a wrestling match, beat Gordon in their wrestling portion of their weird exhibition match that they had. So we know he's got the wrestling. He'll probably have the second best wrestling in the division. Don't think anyone will be able to hang with him in the wrestling aside from Daniel, given the fact that he tech faulted Nicky Rod, and Nicky Rod's one of the better wrestlers in the division. So his first match against Luke Rockhold, I'd probably favour Luke, just given the fact that Luke has spent years doing MMA and training at AKA against the likes of Daniel Cormier, Cain Velasquez, Habib. So he's very used to training with wrestlers, and I'm sure they did a lot of grappling rounds as well, and I'm sure that's kind of what spawned his guillotine front headlock game, snatching up a front headlock and butterfly sweeping. So I'd probably favour Luke in that matchup, but I think it's definitely a winnable match for Pat. And then again, the winner of Adam versus Kyle, I would probably favour them, but I think it is a winnable match for Pat. But again, going off of our categories, what we've seen these people do in submission grappling or jiu-jitsu, I think he has to go into the unproven tier alongside Daniel Kerkvliet.
Okay. How about someone that the last time we had a chat about, there was two guys that you weren't so sure of. So let's talk about those two guys next, right? So first up, Pedro Alex. Have you done your research?
No, I've not. I'm going to... no, I've not done my homework. So if you've got some stuff you want to speak about, I'll let you take the floor, but I think both of them are probably going to fall into the unproven tier.
Yeah, so, second IBJJF World Champs lost to Yatan Bueno in 2024. So,
the Gi or no Gi?
I believe Gi, right? So, in the Gi, good. He has a win over Big Dan at ADXC3, but I didn't see the match. I've got no idea what happened in it, so it could be one of those ones where nothing happened and you get the decision, right? But fair play, he has that on his resume. I've also got him down as having losses to Victor Hugo and Kynan, which is no disgrace at all. These are two of the greatest guys in the sport. So I think he's tough to place, but then again, I've just not seen enough to put him any higher than unproven. I will say that his first round match against Ignacio Santos, who we'll talk about next, And so one of them's going to get up and running and into the next round. So that said, they're in the same quarter of the draw as Victor Hugo, so then it gets very, very difficult for them, right? But yeah, I'd say like in the no-gi elite, because I've not seen that match against Big Dan, I can't make a judgment on it. He has a good credential in the gi, but it's not, that's doing some heavy lifting, but is it enough to go up to C tier? I don't know. Like, I could listen to the argument that it is, but I think like based on our criteria and the fact that just like we've not seen enough to call him proven at elite no-gi jiu-jitsu, I think like D tier is fair enough. But like, I mean, we'll go on to talk about Ignacio Santos next, right? So like these two guys are having a match in the first round. Ignacio Santos, I mean, he won the first South American trials. I believe he's currently undefeated in 2024, although you've got to take into account like who he's been playing against. So strength of schedule comes into that. He, though, has beaten Pedro Alex in 2023. So again, like I can't really put one above the other in my thinking. So I'm just going to put them both together and unproven at this level. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah. Even though we're kind of labeled D tier as like unlikely to win a match, and obviously one of these guys has to win a match, but I think unproven is still the right category for these guys. I mean, looking at under AA, we had Nicky Rod in B tier and Andrew Tackett in A tier, and one of those guys is not going to win a match, but that's just the way it is, and I would still categorize those guys into those tiers.
I think like for like C tier's Disruptor, right?
Yeah.
So for these two guys, I would say like they're going to face each other in the first round. So like Disruptor doesn't really come into my thinking there, right? And then their next round is likely to be against Victor Hugo, right? Now, can they disrupt Victor Hugo? I'd say it's going to be like extremely unlikely that that's going to happen as well.
Yeah.
So I don't really see them being a disruptor or a dark horse to then beat Victor Hugo and then go on and win another match against someone with like big reputation. So we're going that, but like if you want to argue against it, jump into the comments on YouTube and let us know. And then like, well, we've talked about like someone who we think is going to do pretty well, although our exact placing is to be revealed. Why don't we talk about Lucas Kennard, who's going to be up against Victor Hugo in the first round, who's jumped over from ADCC?
Yeah, so automatically having the number one seed first rounds, and then like you could argue if this was seeded traditionally, he would be the number 16 seed.
Is it though? It's all well. Who's not? Is Nicky Rod not the official CJI?
He's not official, but I think like.
But to be revealed where we place Victor Hugo.
Yeah, to be revealed, big secret that you have to wait and see. But I think we would both, given the fact he's beaten Nicky Rod 3 times and given his accomplishments, I think we'd probably place him as the number 1 seed, and then you could argue Lucas being the 16th seed, even though like he is very skilled and good at his leg lock game. Like alongside William, he's going to be one of the smallest guys in the division. Then he's definitely not as credentialed or skilled as William. So I think D tier is where we're going to have to put him. I think we ranked him in D tier as well when we did the 88 kilo ADCC video. And it's just because he's one of these guys that's like just one trial. So these guys that are just breaking onto this seed, this level of competition, and they are unproven at this level. So you could surprise us, you could shock us, but like just going off of what he's done so far, he needs to go into that unproven tier.
And for those who've been following all the tier lists, we've basically done a straight swap with like Lucas Kennard, it's D tier position in the ADCC bracket. We're just going to put Achilles Roca straight in there. Put out a public vote on the Instagram stories on the Jiu Jitsu Oracle, and it came back that Achilles is unproven at this elite level of competition. So I think that's fair enough as well. Although, I do think like he falls into that same category as like Mark McQueen or Josh Saunders, who we kind of talked about in the ADCC Big Boys podcast, which is like they do have like they're potential disruptors. So if like there was a secondary like category sort of like just after C tier, maybe these guys would fall into it. So, yeah. Yes. So, anyway, Lucas, won the Asian trials, was going to be going to the ADCC, has decided to jump over to CJI. Good threat with subs, especially when into the legs, so, like, could be tricky for some of the guys in this division. but just not seen enough at this level to put him any higher than into that unproven at elite world championship level category. Okay, can we talk about someone we've mentioned a few times already, Fellipe Andrew?
Yeah, so Fellipe doesn't usually compete in no-gi that often. He's done quite well when he has in the past, obviously very credentialed in the gi. He's also got a tough first round matchup, even though I'd probably stylistically favour him in that, it's still going to be a tough matchup. For him, given his skill set, having a good guard, he's got good wrestling as well, so he can like potentially take some guys down, but I think his ankle lock and triangle make him very, very dangerous in this division. He's also just generally like a very well-credentialed high-level grappler. I think having those two weapons, he can, in the right opportunity, if he takes advantage of it, beat any guy in this division. So I would put him in B tier. I think if everything goes well on the day, he gets to his positions, I think he can finish any of these guys, and that would naturally put him in B tier, although definitely don't think he's the favourite and wouldn't quite classify him in A tier. Remember a while ago, I think it was on maybe Third Coast Grappling, but he hit a double sleeve triangle in no-gi against Hulk Barboza, which I thought was amazing at the time, especially as a gi guy. So you can definitely hit those triangles in no-gi as well, and then of course you can hit those ankle locks in no-gi as well.
Credential-wise, IBJJF World Champ in the gi, 2023. So, again, not direct comparison in terms of like gi and no-gi, but like high level. On the other side, like I believe he's 0-4 against Victor Hugo. So if he was to run into Victor, that's going to be a tough match for him. But like I think like you've said before, like you mentioned it about Andrew Tackett. Like if you have that one special move that you can hit, then that can go a long way in competition. And like I think this ankle lock with Fellipe, especially with some of these guys that are not as used to guys attacking legs, I think that can definitely lead him to getting a couple of wins. So I think he's a dark horse. But
yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I think he maybe ankle locked Kynan at Worlds one year. So like, if you can hit that on Kynan, I think you can hit it on anyone in this division as well if he gets to that position.
Okay.
Although that being said, million on the line, maybe someone will tap, but yeah.
Yeah, but then maybe something breaks and the match is over. So.
Yeah.
Right, 3, go. Kyle Bain.
Yeah, Kyle in this little pocket of the bracket where I think anyone could come out the first couple matches. We've spoken about this a few times. I think him and Adam Bradley is a bit of a toss-up, even though Adam did beat him at trials, and then whoever comes out of that match could win or could lose against the winner of Pat and Luke. So I think C tier would be a pretty appropriate tier for him. Could see him losing in the first round to Adam, but I could also definitely see him beating Adam Bradley and then beating the winner the second round. I don't see him beating whoever comes out of the other side of that bracket in the semi-final. I think whoever comes out of like Max, Nicky, Owen and Mohammed is very likely to beat whoever comes out of that bottom side, but I think C tier overall is pretty fair for him.
Well, how did you categorise the first round match with Kyle? What we're going to see in it? It's going to be the Battle of Deep Half.
Yeah, I think on the bracket reveal, the guy that was doing it with Craig, can't remember the guy's name, 10th Planet guy, but he said he thought it was going to be a battle of the deep half of Adam Bradley versus the Kimura trap of Kyle Bain, so that might be an interesting one to see how that goes down.
Yeah, I will say Kyle Bain has good leg attacks, and again, like that could open up a few victories in this match. I mean, if he gets like Pat Downey or Luke Rockhold second round, let's just say he gets past Adam, I mean, like the fact that like Kyle's good in on the legs could play into his favour. So I think he's definitely got potential to disrupt, but with the likes of like Muhammad Ali and Max and Nicky Rod on that side of the bracket, like really go any further than like second round or whatever, third round. I don't know. I don't think he's going to go like all the way and win it. So I think like definitely like disruptor potential though. We've mentioned a few guys along the way that have like not seen loads of recently, and here's another one, João Rocha. So Calum, enlighten us as to his chances.
Yeah, so he's another one of the few guys that is absolutely massive, about the same size as Buchecha, just like not quite as lean and athletic, but still like a massive body to have to deal with. The perennial silver medalist like Craig Jones, I think he's got silver a couple times at Worlds and maybe even ADCC as well. So he competed in the last ADCC, lost first round to Roosevelt Souza. He's got another recent loss, although it was DQ to Victor Honorio. Then he's got some big wins the last few years as well. Elder Cruz, Hunter Colvin, Jonathan Alves. He beat Roosevelt Souza not long before the last ADCC. So got some big wins in his resume. Got some losses as well, but it's the likes of like Kainen, Hulk, those kind of guys. So I think B tier, probably fair for him. Is going to be a very tough match for William from a physical and fatigue perspective. I think technically in submission grappling, William is a lot more skilled than him, but the experience of João Gabriel Rocha, as well as the size of him, I think putting him in the same category as William would probably be quite fair. I think those two kind of things even out between the two of them.
I've got 2 silvers for João Gabriel in ADCC, 13 and 15. I think one was weight class and one was absolute. And the absolute defeat was to Calisans.
Okay.
I think he's also managed to beat Rodolfo Vieira back in the day, which is a heck of a name to have on your resume. But we are talking like, 9, 10, 11 years ago now. So yeah, a bit of time has passed. But he's got good accolades, and we have seen him do very, very well against elite names. It's just that classic thing of like, it's a dark horse because we don't really know what we're going to get this time around.
Yeah, I mean, in the gi as well, like he's kind of known for always losing finals to Buchecha, but he has beaten Buchecha in the gi, he's beaten Meregali in the gi as well. So like, just in what he's capable of doing, he's very capable of beating these guys in this division. It's just whether he can put those 4 matches together consistently. Potentially looking unlikely given his past, but definitely a possibility.
And it's Buchecha, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you can hang with Buchecha, never mind if you've got some wins against him or whatever, like super, super impressive. So, last on the list, Victor Hugo. Now, for anyone watching along on YouTube, you'll see as the tier list goes up, in every tier, those that we rank higher within the tier are further left, closer to the letter on the tier, right? So the big question now, although I think we've probably given it away already, is when we slot in Victor Hugo to S tier, where does he go before or after Nicky Rod? Is Victor Hugo the official number 1 seed of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle to win this division? Let us know, Calum.
Okay, so last ADCC definitely gave Gordon Ryan his toughest match out of his 5 matches on the day. It was the only match that he didn't get a submission win, and I think he still won by like 8 odd points, but still, to not get submitted by Gordon Ryan when he's trying to submit everyone on the day is impressive accolade. And then since ADCC, his no-gi losses pretty much look exclusively to Cyborg. He's got a few losses on the record to Cyborg at like no-gi Worlds, as well as at ADCC last time around. And then in the gi, he has got 1 loss to Eric Muniz, 1 loss to Meregali, who are like the 2 best guys in the world at the heavier weight classes in the gi. And then everything aside from that is just all green, all W's. That's including wins over Kainen in the gi, wins over Nicky Rod in no-gi. So I had one of them this year, but he's also done that twice in the past as well. Wins over Fellipe Andrew by submission, who's in this division. Wins over Roosevelt Souza. Wins over Big Dan. So, beating Kainen and Nicky Rod doesn't really get much bigger than that outside of like Meregali and Gordon. So, big clear S tier. Whether we're putting him above or below Nicky Rod, I mean, you could argue that Nicky Rod's got better accolades than Nogi with the 2 silver medals, but this is kind of the same situation as when we were ranking Kynan and Merigali in our under 99. So obviously Kainan's got the Nogi accolades with the 2 gold medals, but it's hard to rank Kynan above Merigali given what Merigali just did to them. And same thing here. You could argue Nicky Rod's got the higher accomplishments, but when you're 3-0 against someone, it's going to be difficult to make a case to rank you above that person. So I think Victor Hugo is the favourite in this division, and I would put him above Nicky Rod in S tier.
Multiple-time world champion in the gi, we've talked about where the world championship IBJJF stacks up. But being able to win that and beat multiple very, very good guys across 1 or 2 days is a huge accomplishment. I think he's done weight and absolute gold as well 1 year. So very, very high in the credentials in the gi. Nogi, this is the thing about the losses to Cyborg. I think this was still when Victor was getting into Nogi more. And I think Cyborg is a veteran of the game and kind of one of these guys that knows how to get the win a lot of the time. So then I think maybe I'd need to go back and watch, but maybe Victor's just finding his feet Nogi. Not trying to take anything away from Cyborg. I just think Victor now that we see Nogi, who beat Nicky Rod, is different to the Victor that we saw a couple of years ago at Nogi.
Yeah, definitely. All the losses to Cyborg were close points wins. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe Cyborg's eking out victories. And then again, like you said, only guy that put up a good showing against Gordon really last time out, even although Gordon won on points. So, and that was 2 years ago in Victor's Nogi, and you've seen the rate of progression that guys can make, like Merigali, like Victor Hugo, when they're at the elite of gi, and then they make the transition to Nogi and they start taking it a lot more seriously. So, Eric Muniz, if you're listening, start making the switch now. Because we'd love to see you in amongst all these guys as well, right? But yeah, Victor Hugo, number 1 seed of the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle. And what we're going to do for both CJI brackets, because they're out already, is do a quick run-through of how we think the bracket will shake out and who will ultimately win. But that's going to be future editions of the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle. That will be out in the near future. But there you have it. That is the CJI over a tier list. Did we call it right? Is it wrong? Is it an absolute shambles? Jump in the comments and let us know.